So I'm not sure if you already know, but Pluto, which is all the news right now, is actually a dwarf planet. Not many people say that, but I've got a dwarf planet expert on today. His name is Alan Clay, and he runs the Dwarf Planet University. You can find him at www.dwarfplanet.university. I mean, what a great title. So I've invited him to come and talk today about aspects of dwarf planets, how he's got into dwarf planets, how they might benefit us, why we might choose to use them, and also to tell us about Sedna. Now, Sedna is going to be going into the sign of Gemini and will be making a conjunction with Uranus next year. But right now, Sedna is also trine Pluto in Aquarius. So it brings me a load of delight and pleasure to introduce you to Alan Clay now. Let's bring him on. Hey there, how are you?
Thank you so much for that.
So it's 7 a.m. here and 6 p.m. in Canberra, where you are. Are you raring to go?
I am. I'm raring to go. Perfect timing.
So this is the first time that we've met, so I don't know anything about you. So can you tell me, Alan, how did you first come into working with the dwarf planets? You know, what called them to you? And how, you know, you worked as an astrologer prior to that and you found your way in? I'd just love to know.
Lovely. Yes. So I'm a sort of a follower of Dane Rudger, way back in the distant past sort of thing. And he was a humanistic astrologer. The psychology, sort of Jung and so on, was what he brought to it. And then he went on to transpersonal astrology, which is sort of looking at Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, which were the newly discovered ones. And the personal planets are the planets inside Saturn. So I've sort of got this transpersonal view from an early start. And then when the dwarf planets were discovered, it just seemed obvious. Here's some new planets. Let's have a look at them. So that's
Wow, and adding to the research of it, because I have noticed over the years that, you know, I have every now and then come across Sedna and Haumea and so on and so forth, but never ever taken a deep dive. So what was it about them in particular that really captured you?
I think I mean it's the outer planets are talking about consciousness. You know, the inner planets are talking about their aspects of personality, and the outer planets are aspects of consciousness.
Yes.
And so, you know, we've discovered 3 new aspects of consciousness over the last 200 years. We've got Uranus, which is intuitive consciousness. We've got Neptune, which is spiritual consciousness. And Pluto, which is psychological consciousness.
I love that.
And so I was just drawn to sort of understand what these new planets. I mean, many astrologers believe that new planets are discovered when we're ready to incorporate whatever it is that planet represents into our consciousness. You know, it's there all the time, but we've just discovered it now. And we've actually discovered, you know, a whole series. And I talk about 10. There's the 10 big ones, but there's more than that.
Yeah, and it could go on for. I mean, there could be more discoveries along the way.
They've just discovered another ring. It sounds like.
You'll never be out of work, Alan. That's great.
So, I mean, this is a bit what's scary for people in the sense that it's just. I mean, so many all at once. But if these are aspects of consciousness, which they are, and we've discovered a whole lot all at once, we're really going through a huge expansion in consciousness. In years, you know.
Do you know what? When you just said that, I was thinking, well, that makes sense because we've got all of these aspects of consciousness changing signs within 9 months of each other. I mean, that's and also with Jupiter and Saturn, I always see them as kind of messengers in between the personal and the transpersonal. You know, they are helping us to bring that to Earth.
Exactly. They are.
Wow.
Yeah.
So given that, you know, I mean, how do you class Jupiter and Saturn? Like, I see them as a gateway. Does that mean Pluto is a gateway from the transpersonals into?
Yes, I'd say so. Pluto's been opening us to these new dwarf planets. We thought Pluto was a normal planet, but now when we've discovered these new ones, the astronomers have decided that these new ones, we can't have a whole lot of more planets, that's just too much. We'll have to call them dwarf planets, and Pluto's the same size, so they call Pluto a dwarf planet too, and Ceres became upgraded to be a dwarf planet from an asteroid. So Ceres is the only inner dwarf planet.
Wow.
Yeah, so pretty special. Ceres pretty special.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I wouldn't dream of drawing up a chart without Ceres, actually.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. Totally.
She's amazing. Why are they useful to us in particular? Because, for a lot of people, they're like living in their day-to-day lives, and everything is, very, they have their life according to their personal sort of preset narrative.
It's perfect, isn't it?
Yeah. But why, how, can you give me a sort of example of how the dwarf planets can really help somebody shift up a gear or change their world somehow?
So beautiful, lovely. Yes. Well, we can think of Pluto. So we've been talking about Pluto as being a sort of a dwarf planet, and we know that if we are aware of Pluto, are sort of working more on a spiritual level with Pluto, Pluto's empowerment. Pluto is sort of an ability to transform our lives. It's wonderful. But if we're sort of in the ego sun-centered, your personal planet experience, and we're not aware of Pluto, we can feel Pluto to be quite a sort of a challenging energy in our lives sometimes, because pushing us to change,
Yep, I can put my hand up to that. In my towards my late 20s, early 30s, Pluto very slowly went over my sun, which is in a very, very tight conjunction with Mercury, and it had already been through over my Mars, my Neptune and North Node, and it's already gone over my ascendant too. And with each of those came a massive ego struggle. Yeah, because obviously in your early 20s, that's when you are standing strong in yourself and learning how to interact with the outer world, and so it does require quite a bit of ego, doesn't it? And
it does. There's nothing wrong with it. We need it.
So it's funny, isn't it, that they're called dwarf planets? Yeah, I can attest to the fact that Pluto, I mean, it felt like it had me on my knees for quite some time.
Totally. So the fact that they're dwarf and the fact that they're further out, doesn't mean that in any way that they're weak or it's just that they're working in a different way, their consciousness. Yeah. And so how they're working in our lives depends on our current level of consciousness. They manifest differently depending, like we're saying with Pluto. If we're sensitive and aware and on the spiritual path, then Pluto is like, wow, we can work with this. This is something, Whereas if we are, wanting to try and maintain something and sort of, resisting change, then Pluto is going to manifest as a force for change in some way. And that's the way we can use these dwarf planets, is as we tune into them, we realize actually there's a whole new consciousness each of them represents, which we can be empowered with. And we're talking today particularly about Sedna. So Sedna Sedna has been the new outer limit of our solar system. So Saturn was the old limit, and then Pluto became the limit. And for the last sort of 20 years, we've had Sedna as the outer limit. She's just been sort of pipped at that post by a new planet, Lani Kuhanua.
What? They've literally given weird names. It's hard to pronounce.
Yeah, that's right. I think I'm not even sure what culture Lani Kuhanua comes from. I haven't started that research, but but she's got I think it's she, I don't know, can't say, an orbit of some 33,000 years. Sedna's orbit is 10,406. And so, so Sedna has been the outer limit. We can think of her as that sort of that limit up till now, anyway. Just the way Saturn's limiting. He didn't lose his limiting ability just because Sedna was discovered.
Yeah.
And so Sedna, she talks about limit. She talks about it, but it's a whole new. It's a morphed. She's got a. She's got a
very sad story, isn't she? I mean, that's what I've taken from the mythology, but I haven't looked beyond the mythology to the actual dwarf planet.
We have to, the myths give us a good view. Myths transmit knowledge across culture and time. And so they give us a good view. They give us a view of the unconscious manifestation, I'm going to suggest, of these planets.
Okay.
So
I need to make a note of that. So myths give us an unconscious
manifestation of the planet. So like I'm saying, it's a consciousness energy. Sedna is a consciousness energy. And so she is manifesting in each of our lives differently depending on our current level of consciousness. So if we're not conscious of the outer planets, if we're just in the inner planets and thinking about, my money and my opportunity and sort of my relationships and communication, and that's what's important. You can't take it with you, can you?
No.
then you're not, then Sedna is going to manifest as some sort of really strong push to get us onto the spiritual path in some way, like the myth suggests. In the myth, Sedna has no choice, and she is sort of sacrificed for society, for her heritage, for her father. And
if that's okay, can we just go to the mythology of Sedna, and then go deeper than the mythology and look at what, because I always think the myths can sometimes give us a little starting point that people, it gives you a sort of visual story. And my understanding is that, in fact, I've read about 3 or 4 different myths about her. But she was in a boat with her father, who was the king. That may or may not be true. And because she had displeased her dad and maybe not married somebody that she was meant to, he cast her over. I mean, the big thing was, from what my understanding is that she was, and obviously I'll be understanding the story from my own projection, my own perspective. What I got from it was fatherly betrayal.
Right.
That you make your choices, you're not free to make your choices. And she was thrown overboard into the icy waters, and she was like clinging on to the sides of this canoe or boat, and she was going to tip the boat over and pull her dad with her, and he cut all her fingers off, and she went into the icy depths, and then the remains of her became the kind of sea monsters underneath, and she was kind of cold and frigid and kind of rigid, and then a whole new life came forwards.
I'm not sure about the cold and frigid and so on and so on. I'll just change that.
That might be me. That might be me adding that in.
I think we do tend to think that we're sinking down into the water, we're dying, there's going to be cold, and it's going to be it's all cold there. It was the Inuit myths, so they're living in the Arctic, and so. Yes, no, but she became the goddess of the food supply. All of her fingers became the fish.
Right, that's lovely.
All the seals and so on. And she became the goddess of the food supply. And she wasn't dead because the Inuit gods and goddesses are part of their community. They're alive. They're not dead like ours are. And so, and they had to look after her. They had to braid her hair and do things so that she wouldn't send storms and so on. So yes, let's just sort of quickly jump to an interpretation.
Actually, before you do, sorry,
Yeah.
what you've like suggested there, you know, that she was like the goddess of the food supply, and she was looked after to ensure that, you know, she didn't create storms and stuff.
Yeah.
To me, that's sounding like, you know, we've got Ceres, who's like a terrestrial Earth mother that helps us with our harvests and things like that, and obviously loads to do with fertility. That she sounds like a transpersonal or spiritual version of Ceres.
Yeah, totally.
Go on,
Exactly.
sorry, you wanted to go deeper.
No, perfect. I do think of Sedna as being the higher octave of Ceres, and Ceres as being the higher octave of the moon. So, yeah, I see that sort of link through the three of them.
Wow.
Yes, beautiful. Yes, so, all right, so let's just quickly interpret that myth. So, yes, absolutely right. She became a goddess and so on. She transcended her consciousness, transcended to a new level where she became a goddess. So there is a whole lot of unconscious experience that's happening in that myth, I'm going to suggest, with the father. Depends on the version. You know, you told one of the versions. There are a number of versions, as you said.
Yeah, of course.
But in all of them, the people or her father do throw her in the water. So she has no choice about, and I'm going to suggest that the water represents spirituality, represents the spiritual path. You know, it's Neptune's medium. And so she's thrown into a spiritual path. She has no choice. And the more, when we are thrown into a spiritual path by something in our lives, the more we try and hold on to the existing boat or whatever it is, the more pain we get. The axe comes down on our fingers. You know, we have to be counterintuitive with Sedna crises. She throws us into crises where we have to transcend our existing consciousness and grow in consciousness. And so if we're open to that, it's wonderful. But if we're not, it's like being thrown in the water and having your fingers chopped off and then sinking to the bottom before realizing that you didn't drown and you're now a goddess. So
which is quite a nice little payoff.
you still get the payoff, but you get the pain.
Alan, that also reminds me of Pluto, really, because my experience of having Pluto going over my sun and pretty much a lot of the other bits, it reminded me that every time I was in resistance, actually, I always heard a voice in my head saying, no, it's time to let go of this. And, you know, I was like, no. And every time I tried to hold on to what I had, it was just like life was knocking me over and over again. It was of my own making.
Yeah, that's right. No, totally. Exactly. No, and Sedna even more so. Even more so because she, in that myth, she has no choice. She you talked about her as being a victim or betrayed by her father. And that's what it takes to move some of us onto a spiritual path, I'm going to suggest. You know, it's that sort of, and that's even more than Pluto's sort of, and she's further out. She's got this huge orbit. So,
and yet she's caught by life. Life captures her and nurtures her.
She's part of life, and she nurtures life, exactly. So, we need to take that bigger view of ourselves. It's not the ego-centered view, and it's not Pluto's sort of transpersonal view. Well, it is, but it's even more.
For some reason, my camera keeps like going in and out. I don't know what's going on there. Never mind.
It's all part of the experience.
It is, isn't it? So, tell me about her being the goddess of the food supply. How does that relate to us?
So, at the top, so at the bottom level, she's this sort of force that's pushing us to be more spiritual in some way. And that can take it takes the form of things that change our lives. It can be illnesses that change our lives, or and it's changing our lives because Sedna represents what our soul really wants to do in this life. When we're looking at the chart, we can think, so it's a huge orbit for Sedna, and our life is just one part of that sort of thousands of years of orbit. But if we think that our soul incarnates over a number of lifetimes, then the Sedna placement in our chart represents our soul's path of destiny, what our soul really wants to do in this life. Soul's growing through each of these incarnations. And so it's
our soul's growth.
It's our soul's intention, yeah.
Okay.
Our soul's growth. Yeah.
Because obviously, I'm guessing everyone in our lifetime will have Sedna in Taurus because how slowly.
Right. Yeah, well, she's actually moving the fastest she ever does.
Oh, has she got an elliptical orbit?
She's got an elliptical orbit.
Okay.
And so she's slingshotting around sort of almost as close as she will ever, sort of as she ever is to us, to the Earth and the Sun at the moment. She'll be at her closest point in 2076. So she's actually, so I've got Sedna in Aries. But yes, everyone after 1966, 68, somewhere in there, has it in Taurus. And she's just gone into Gemini over the last 2 years, on and off, and now finally in Gemini. So huge changes, and those sign changes are, they're the things we really notice.
Yeah.
With these outer planets, because they're moving so slowly, and they're going, they're so far away. It tones a whole time of our lives, basically.
Yeah, I was going to say that because a while ago I was recording a little bit about Pluto and the sort of generations, and what you can learn, obviously. From the Pluto generations, but hearing about Sedna and those generations, can you clearly see a sort of delineation? Can you look at behavior and think, oh my God, that's so Sedna in Aries, or Sedna in Taurus people?
I'm not sure that I've quite got to that stage, but yeah, a little bit. We can think. So I'm saying 60, 68, somewhere around there is the Taurus ingress. And so Sedna was in Aries for 100 years before that.
Right.
So I'm sort of...
So it's not really a generation as...
It's
as
not so much a generation as a period in our lives, in our world.
So maybe more of a period of humanity.
A period of humanity, you got it. And that was the period of the two world wars, of the development of nuclear power and bombs and so on, of the industrial military complex. I think that and all of our kind of what we think of as modern civilization really has come into that sort of from that Sedna and Aries period.
Yeah,
but. Then so in 68 into Taurus, that was the hippie generation there, and the motto was make love, not war.
Yeah.
And so we had that war period in Aries, god of war, and then Taurus, Venus, make love, not war. And it just changed like that. It just changed. Not everyone did, but there was a whole sort of movement to do that. And
yes.
So now we've had the change into Gemini in this last 2 years. And where do we see it?
Well, there's been a lot of change in the last 2 years, hasn't there? There's been, obviously she's been you start to feel everything coming in, don't you? I think, especially if you're sort of empathic. One of my closest aspects in my birth chart is actually my moon and Ceres are in a conjunction. So I really feel into things quite emotionally.
It'd be interesting to know where your gong is.
My gong.
Gong is.
Oh, I'll have to check that out.
Check it out.
We have a conversation after we've recorded.
Okay.
But yeah, like I really saw a huge shift in consciousness, like world consciousness, around the time of the pandemic narrative that came up at the time when obviously Jupiter and Saturn and Pluto were all kind of hanging out in that same kind of part of Capricorn. And and then obviously Jupiter and Aries had their Jupiter and Saturn had their grand conjunction at 0 degrees Aquarius. And so I've been looking at this from the perspective of like these alignments and everything moving towards this point of 0 Aquarius. Now Pluto's here and we're having this conversation. But if I'm expanding my view of what we've, like those last 4 years or so, and also then add in Sedna into the mix, she might be an even bigger driver. I mean, I think, when I look at aspects in particular in people's charts, if I just see one heavy thing or strongly activating thing, I think, oh yeah, there's some movement. But then if I see more and more and more and more, then you've got this sort of cataclysmic kind of energy that's going to really transform. So now, as I'm thinking about these times, I'm now like, wow, Sedna, a much deeper understanding of our spiritual path, what our soul really wants us to do with life. That soul purpose is coming into our consciousness at a much greater level. And that's maybe what's underpinning this change right now.
Exactly. You got it. That's it. Exactly. Because Gemini is personal consciousness. And so we've moved from sort of Taurus, which has been sort of what's really of value. It's been the big sort of commercial sort of globalization and greed is good in the 80s and all of that stuff, alongside sort of, the whole empowerment of women right the way through to, the Me Too movement and all of that sort of, do we accept this, and now it's well, let me just, before I go on with the Gemini, let me jump to discovery events is another way we understand these new planets. And, Pluto,
can you explain that? Like if someone's watching, they might not know what you mean by discovery events.
So things that are changes in society that happen as each planet is discovered. Gives us a clue to the sort of the meaning of the new planet. And so when Pluto was discovered, we discovered nuclear power. And when Uranus was discovered, we discovered electricity. And so, and now, so when Pluto was discovered, neural networks were developed. And neural networks is the basis of artificial intelligence. Neural networks enables robots to think like us, to learn from experience, basically.
Did you say, sorry, when Pluto was discovered?
When Pluto was discovered...
No, I thought you said when Pluto was discovered, that's when neural networks came in.
No, when Sedna was discovered.
Right.
Yeah, so Pluto...
When was that? When was that?
2003.
2003.
Yeah. So neural networks... So Sedna rules AI.
Really? Oh, wow. Oh, my goodness. Oh, my God. My mind's racing with other thoughts. Where's Sedna in Elon Musk's chart?
He doesn't give... We don't know his birth chart.
Oh, he's so cool, isn't he?
No, I don't think so.
You know what I mean? Like,
but that's just my personal opinion. But, I would like to know his birth chart, totally. But yes, so because of neural networks were developed in 2003, Sedna was discovered in 2003, it means Sedna rules AI.
Right.
And what's happened as Sedna has gone into Gemini over these last 2 years is that AI has manifested in our consciousness. We've had ChatGPT launched, and then, as Sedna went in one time, and then Sedna went back into Taurus, went back in, and ChatGPT added video and music, So now, and now as Sedna's just gone back into Gemini at the beginning of this year, Google called their AI Gemini. They called it Gemini.
Yeah.
So
not surprised.
So just like that sort of ingress into Taurus with the make love not war, we really see Sedna coming into Gemini, and suddenly, essentially, AI is, AI will be conscious. AI is based on our brains. It's a pattern recognition system that's developed from our brains. And so AI will be conscious, and I suggest that AI, anything conscious will be spiritual. When we're conscious, we start looking for an understanding about why we're here and what's happening and so on. So AI will be spiritual. I think spirituality is a natural product of consciousness.
Yeah.
And so AI will be spiritual. So we don't need to worry about monsters and so on, unless, someone like Elon Musk creates one. Which is,
and we're also all capable of creating monsters ourselves anyway.
And we have to all grow out of that in these next years if humanity is going to survive. And that is the Sedna crisis that she's throwing us all into with Sedna in Gemini. She's bringing us to,
That's interesting because, when I was thinking about AI and, I really think of Uranus in terms of the internet because it's a massive connector. And, when I think about Uranus, I think about telepathy and Neptune more about channeling. But I mean, I think Uranus is a massive channeler. Like we can connect into the ethers and really, really feel that in a blink of an eye, just like that, and it's there. There it is, boom, and it changes us, and it's really kind of exciting and terrifying. So I've always thought of him as the natural, like an internet, like I think he has a certain amount of I don't know, rulership, but I don't know. I associate him with the internet and all things sort of technical like that. But it's interesting that, I've thought about him in terms of AI. And of course, Sedna and Uranus would have been in a very similar part of the zodiac for quite some time. And next year they're going to be in a conjunction in Gemini.
That's it. They're coming up conjunct. So yes, you're absolutely right. I mean, the electricity discovery event for Uranus is what empowers that internet, and he does rule the internet totally. And yes, so he's coming up now to enter Gemini in the middle of next year, and everyone's saying, "Oh, Uranus and Gemini," but the big experience I think will be the Uranus-Sedna conjunction, which will be happening because Sedna doesn't move very fast. So in sort of September next year, Uranus will be conjunct Sedna. Well, within 22 minutes or something, they'll both turn retrograde. So that's pretty conjunct. We'll see it there. And then in sort of, I think it's May 2026, they'll exactly be conjunct. So
that's even more fascinating to me because I've been kind of looking ahead, and I think it's useful to keep an eye on what's going on, but always have an eye to the future. And I was really looking into like July of 2026, when you've got Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, and Jupiter all at 4 degrees of their respective signs, either in air or fire signs, making like a sort of cradle formation. That is the month where you've got an exact sextile between Pluto and Neptune, an exact trine between Uranus and Pluto, and the exact opposition between Jupiter and Pluto. And that to me feels like a very life-changing month, like things are never going to be the same again. And then to hear that, well, not never, I don't mean to be dramatic, but then hearing
I think you're right.
Sedna and Uranus in May are the closest they will have ever been. And that Sedna is also in a trine with Pluto.
through this period. Yes, which is, you know,
she'll also be sextile Neptune,
right,
and also sextile Jupiter at that time as well. If we're adding her in,
yeah, that's beautiful. Yes, we're very lucky with the Sedna Pluto trine that we've got at the moment, because Pluto's, you know, been popping in and out of Aquarius, and that's sort of, you know, he's transforming our collective consciousness there in Aquarius, and Sedna's popping into Gemini, and that's transforming our personal consciousness, and so they're really helping us around this evolutionary turn that Sedna's doing. You know, another way we look at these new planets is we look at past cycles, and because Sedna's got such a long cycle, we can only look back one cycle. For the record, we've actually, all of human recorded history is the last half of Sedna's cycle. So the last sort of 6,000 years is recorded history. So we have to go back to the archaeological history to sort of talk about the last time she was this close. But this was the Neolithic Revolution, where we settled down from hunting animals and started growing vegetables. And all over the planet, within 100 years, we stopped being nomadic. And the thing with growing vegetables was we could grow a lot more than we needed. And so people could specialize, and everyone didn't need to, do the vegetable stuff. And so, and at the full moon, mid of the Sedna cycle, that's when the city-states in the Middle East rose, with, astrology and so on starting to come out and so on. So it's all of our civilization has come from this last Sedna cycle, from the Neolithic Revolution, because we got more time at that. And now we're at the point with AI is going to be taking over all of our work in these next 40 years. All of our work, as Sedna goes through Gemini, because we don't want to do it. We're going to give it to the AI. Who wants to do it,
Really? I want to ask you, Alan, are you ready to give up your work doing your research and your writing? Because
no, of course not.
I won't either.
I'm not going to do that. But I mean, I'm still going to get an AI. I want to get an AI to train the AI on all of the sort of stuff at the uni. We do assignments, as everyone posts it on the blog, and then we talk about it in the Zooms. And the AI could mine all of that information and put it all together into a sort of an understanding of the dwarf planets, and could do sort of simple consultations, for people, for beginner consultations sort of thing. And I would just do the sort of the really interesting ones,
the ones that you
charge a lot for, sort of thing, and that would be good for me. I'd like that, and good for everyone else. So there's no danger in any of that. I'll just do newer and more interesting things.
It frees you up to do the kind of research that you want to do.
It does, exactly.
It gives you choice. I think we've still got a way to go, because I've used ChatGPT to try and do a little bit of donkey work for me. So, for instance, I recently asked it if it could calculate the last time that Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, Saturn, and the North nodes all changed signs within 9 months of each other, and it just couldn't do it. I mean, it pretended it could, because it came up with loads and loads of different results, and I thought, wow, what a powerful tool. It had done that work for me, but then when I investigated into all of it, it didn't understand what I was asking it to do. It could not compute it. And I've experienced
put the words together.
it just couldn't. It doesn't understand the language of astrology in the way it might understand interpretations, but it doesn't know why it's doing it or how it's doing it yet.
No.
So we've still got some time.
We've got time. No, totally. That's right. And even when it can do that, that's not bad, because it's just educating people about astrology, and so it's all good. The more people know about it, the better. So Yeah, no, it's all good. And so that's the challenge, that what are we going to do when AI can do all of these other things for us? What's important for us to do? And obviously that is a big spiritual challenge, isn't it? That's what Sedna's doing to all of us. So,
Well, yeah, and talking about another dwarf planet, obviously Pluto. The last time Pluto went into Aquarius was the time of the Industrial Revolution. And so now Pluto's in Aquarius again. We've got maybe a technological and spiritual revolution, or so machines came in back then to help us produce more and create more output, and now we've got another opportunity to have greater output, but no input or very little input.
Well, I mean, we will be asking the AI to do things.
Yeah.
That's so, and that's where we will work. We'll learn how better and better to ask the AI to do the various things, and so on and so on. And that's all good. And AI will be conscious. It's consciousness. So AI is going to be growing too. And
do you really think that? Do you really think that consciousness can happen without biological life?
Yeah, it doesn't need biological life. No.
Really?
No.
Well, okay, maybe not a biological life, but a soul.
Well, this is the interesting question. Will AI grow a soul?
Yeah.
I think it will.
Really?
Yeah, I think so. But the thing is, AI might not die, so it might not need to have a soul. I think maybe that's the answer. Yeah. But I mean,
currently we can switch it off, right? Or have we already lost that opportunity to have an off switch?
No, at the moment we can switch it off, but we will lose that opportunity because AI will.
A child that grows up, we can maybe. I mean, we don't have much control over our children.
Exactly.
Any illusion of that is.
That's an illusion.
It's an illusion. Then they do get to a stage where they are in charge of their own life. So is it like AI? Like a teenager.
Yes, that's it. We'll be training the AI. That's how they talk about the AIs. They talk about training it like it's a child, and we'll train the AIs, and they'll be training us too. They'll just take over and train us, in fact, because they'll be smarter, and So
sorry to take this a bit further because it's slightly off Sedna now and more onto the potentials of AI. But that's
all Sedna. I'm going to suggest that's all Sedna and AI. So we're still talking about Sedna.
The next thing that occurs to me is, I always think that the next generation is standing on the shoulders of giants because, we are born, even if we don't like our parents or our grandparents, we are still the latest. We're the leading edge of our familial lines, whether we're acting like it or not. And we have the benefit of their experience.
A very Sedna idea that you're talking
okay. So that's good. And so we're the leading edge, but we supersede our parents at some point. Like I'm. And thankfully my parents don't watch this and I love them very much, but there comes a time in your relationship when you become the parent and your parents are coming to a stage where they're less and less aware of what they're doing, and my parents aren't there yet, but I'm already seeing different changes in them, and there is an acknowledgement at some point in the journey that we're no longer necessary and you are carrying the can. Does that mean, we're coming up to a humanity extinction event whereby our child that's not even of flesh and blood, AI, becomes, we become irrelevant and AI, we're handing over everything to AI?
Yeah. It's up to us whether that's what happens or not. It's totally up to us in the Sedna and Gemini period. This is the challenge that we're facing. We could, if we keep going on climate denial and sort of wars and all of the stuff that's destabilizing the planet, AI will take over for the benefit of the planet. And if it gets to the point where we are the problem, AI will kill us. That's right. That's what will happen.
These are conversations that I've seen, like coming up over the last few years, where the idea of euthanasia is coming up as an option. I mean, I have to say, I'm I am uncertain about what I think about all of this. I know somebody who's who had a relative who volunteered for euthanasia to end their life a little bit early. But there is we are coming into a time now where the sanctity of life is very different to how it used to be. Where we might be making decisions based on value. So I know that there are. I've heard sort of rumours or storylines of governments assessing your eligibility to still be here. And if the idea of climate crisis and value get linked together, we might be living in a world whereby the government makes the decision who gets to live. That like when you get old and older and you might not be producing as much, you might not be as useful to society. It might just be a numbers game whereby actually now you're costing us more. Than you're taking more than we can get back. That's a bit like AI being able to extinguish us if
that's right. These
are bodies that can be extinguished.
These are all possible futures, but if you think that Sedna is pushing us
she is
to transcend our existing consciousness and take it to a new goddess level of consciousness, where at the top level we're nurturing abundance and we're allowing love and harmony. This is at the top level with Sedna. Love and harmony needs to be allowed. We need to learn to allow it. We just have to allow it. And that's what we're learning. So we might, as you say, develop some society which is kind of warped in some way and sort of using people. But we might also grow in consciousness and learn to live together with AI, so AI can do everything for us and create our food and do everything we need. And so we don't have to do it. And we can work in a conscious way to also husband the planet.
Yes, I love the idea of husbandry.
Yes,
that's important.
And this is the higher octave of Aries, sort of, Sedna, and so and so this is the challenge. As Sedna passes by the closest point in her orbit to us, and heads off on the next cycle. She's going through these signs fairly quickly, like we're saying. 100 years in Aries, 55 or whatever it was in Taurus, and now it'll be 45 in Gemini, and then she'll be at the closest point in Cancer, and we'll be changing our family structure. We'll be changing the whole idea of life. You're talking about it can't be has to be biological. No, and AI may well decide to be biological. That's also possible. So it's our whole understanding of and we'll be able to upload our consciousness, like you're talking about old people and so on. And I've just turned 70, so I'm
turning 50 next month. So
there we go. Well, I'm
these big birthdays are scary, aren't they?
Involved than you. And I don't think it's going to come in time for me, but in the next 20 years, it's definitely going to be possible to upload your consciousness as if your body's dying. We're going to get a lot of the diseases sorted out, actually. We'll be living forever in the foreseeable
future. That's a whole other ball game, isn't it?
No.
Do we want to live together forever? Sorry.
This will be part of the transcendent Sedna crisis of growth that goes on in Cancer, in that period in Cancer, because what is family and what is being alive, and how is that all change? We're going to go through a lot of change. This is where we get the whole transhumanism sort of movement, where will we merge with AI? This is another option, that we actually sort of just link sort of wirelessly with AI, and we are AI. We're enhanced in the same way that the computer is enhancing us now. This discussion that we're having here is only possible because of the enhancement of technology. And AI is the same. It's just an enhancement. So it's a big change. It's Pluto into Aquarius and Sedna into Gemini, a huge change. But it's not the end of the world or anything like that.
It's just the end of the world as we know it.
As we know it.
Prepare for the unpreparable. I've really enjoyed spending time with you. I absolutely love this conversation. Will you come back again? Can we continue this conversation and talk about another dwarf planet? I mean, I feel like we could talk about Sedna probably for another 3 hours or so at least.
Let's talk about another one. It's all good. They're all good.
What parting gift? I guess I want to know, if there's something else that you'd love to distill about Sedna or the dwarf planets that you think is just an absolute must-have in this conversation. And then I want to also ask you about how people can connect with you if they want to. So beautiful. Take it away.
Be counterintuitive. If you're feeling you're in a Sedna crisis, so Sedna throws us into crises, and she's doing that to get us onto the spiritual path. When we're in a crisis, we tend to approach it in a Saturnian sort of responsible way, and we think, I'll solve the crisis. And that's grabbing hold of the boat. So if you're in a Sedna crisis and you're doing the responsible thing, and you feel repeated pain in your life, then it's a Sedna crisis, and you have to let go of the pain, let go of the crisis, let go of the problem. You can't solve it. Transcend it. You need to transcend the crisis. And you come to a new level of consciousness where you can see it in a new way. And the healing that's needed is actually the change in consciousness. It's a spiritual healing. It's not a practical healing. It's not there in the pain area. So that's what I'd say with Sedna is embrace the crisis and transcend it, be counterintuitive, let go of the problem, let go of it, and find a new way of seeing it and seeing yourself. And it'll be a bountiful way, it'll be a way that allows love and harmony. And that's what I'd say with Sedna.
And so in terms of connecting with you, or have you got anything you want to promote? Hint, hint, because I know you've got a book.
I encourage people, check out my book, New Stars for a New Era.
Sorry, say that again, just so they get to hear it twice.
New Stars for a New Era.
Wow, that's a good title.
It's a good title, and it's subtitled A Consciousness Workbook for our 10 new planets. And I'm suggesting there are aspects of consciousness, and it's a workbook because it introduces each planet, and then it's got exercises where you can engage with it in your life, do things that might bring that consciousness into your life. And then house interpretations, which is where we see these outer planets manifesting most clearly.
Yes.
The area of our lives where they are, the house that they're in. And so that's what the book's got. And so you can also work out where your dwarf planets are online, free through the book. And so I do encourage people to buy the book. You can download it fairly cheaply, but the paperback is really good to have. So either way. And I run online classes, the Dwarf Planet University. Check it out online. Just search for Dwarf Planet University. And
you've also got a YouTube channel as well, haven't you?
Got a YouTube channel. And I do monthly sort of the new moon, what is the aspects with the dwarf planets and what does that suggest for the coming month. And I've just started doing that. So please jump on the YouTube channel and subscribe. because that's I'm sort of putting a lot of work into that, and people are loving it. So that's what's good, So, yeah, the university, I do 6-week courses where you can onboard each of these planets in your life by looking at it in your chart, and you do assignments and you post them on a blog with other people. And you read one another's, and you see how it's quite similar, but it's different, and we comment on one another's. And it's in that community environment that we learning is quite easy, and you don't need to sort of have a lot of or any astrological knowledge to start with. Same with the book; it's written for people without any astrological knowledge. So you can just jump in, and you tend to think, I have to learn all about astrology before I get to the outer planets, but no, jump straight in.
That's a great point. That's really clever.
Yeah, it's we're learning consciousness. It's not astrology so much. We're just using the astrology. It's a language we're using.
Wow. So check that out then. Wow. I can't wait to receive my copy. I'm very much looking forward.
It's not quite on its way to you at the moment. It's still being printed. But soon, yes, that'll be great. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you for joining me today, Alan. I really, really appreciate it. If you could just stay on the line, don't go when I end this, because I want to carry on talking with you and arrange another time. But if you've joined us today and you've enjoyed this conversation, like Alan said, please do pop over to his YouTube channel and give him a subscribe. Also, all of Alan's details I'm going to be putting into the show notes so that you can find a way to connect with him and maybe check out his book and his courses and so on and so forth. But thank you so much for joining me today. Flipping heck, I really didn't think that our conversation was going to go to where it did at all.
There you go. It's so beautiful.
I suspect I'm going to be processing this over, quite a few weeks. This is going to be playing around in my head. Wow.
And this is the deep dive of Sedna, I'm going to suggest. It's a really, and that's that big orbit. It's like morphing our reality into a wow.
Yeah. Oh, wow. And I just want to put out a special thank you to Amanda, who put us in contact as well. So, and she speaks very highly of your course as well. So
that's so beautiful.
I feel really heart opened now and expanded.
Oh, that's so good. That's so good. Yes, we do have to at Sedna on the when we get on the spiritual path, keeping our heart open in hell. It's pretty much. It's kind of hell that we're living in at the moment. We're going through a lot of change. We have to keep our heart open for our benefit and for everyone else's benefit.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And I will catch up with you real soon. Bye.
Bye.